Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, the aspiring to be viral weekly YouTube show all about Notre Dame football. My name's Eric Hansen. The guy in the other box is Tyler James. And if we can tell you exactly what the hell happened Saturday at Notre Dame Stadium in a 16-14 cratering to Northern Illinois and why, I think we might just reach viral status. That and if I get my words not tangled up. We'll sure give it a try, and we'll work in your questions into the conversation tonight as number 18 Notre Dame looks to start its road to redemption in West Lafayette, Indiana against the 1-0 Purdue Boilermakers on Saturday. We've got all the latest from Coach Marcus Freeman's Monday press conference, injury updates and depth chart moves, and big picture questions and discussions. As my friend piano man Steve Lundgren, who wrote and sings our theme music, once said, take your heart pills and buckle up. It's all ahead on
Football Never Sleeps.
All right. Even if you're upset about the start of Notre Dame's season, it's still a good time to be a subscriber to InsideNDSports.com. Give us a try with a 30-day free trial that's exclusive to our YouTube audience. Use promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to us over on the Insider Lounge message board, where we spend a lot of time and share our inside information first, and you get access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage. Make sure you're subscribed to us here on our YouTube channel as well, which is free, but it allows you to get in questions during the show, which we will take. So please start filling up the queue. We appreciate everyone who's joining us. We're almost to 3,000 subscribers. We're almost at that milestone. So if anyone would like to help us out there, we would very much appreciate your support. And today is Monday night, or that means earlier today, we spoke with Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman, which I'm not sure he got asked any questions about Purdue today. We're still in Northern Illinois review mode. So I think that's where most of our discussion will be tonight, as you can imagine. Marcus Freeman's biggest message from today, I thought, Eric, was that the program needs to learn how to handle success. Is that a forgivable mistake in year three as the head coach? And do you believe that is something that can be fixed under Marcus Freeman?
Well, I don't think it's a challenge this week, but I can see what he was saying about last week. Is it a forgivable? I think one of our posters on our message board community, NWI Irish 96, I think he said it, Andrew, I think he said it well. Marcus doesn't get another free pass. I think you have to move on from this one, but this needs to be the last time we're doing this story in the Marcus Freeman era.
Right.
Four touchdown underdog. And you know what's interesting, Tyler, when we had the press conference the week before, Jim Tressel, Marcus's college coach, called him and kind of reminded him of that. I would agree. I think most of what lost the game for Notre Dame was above the eyebrows, but I give Northern Illinois a lot of credit too. Those guys came in and they had swagger. I mean, they didn't act like they were in awe at all. They acted like they expected to win from the opening whistle.
Yeah. The biggest thing to me is that no one should set the tone for handling success more than Freeman, right? So that falls directly on his table. That's something that he has to do a better job of getting a team prepared and not letting them slip up in moments like that. Exactly why did it happen that way? I don't know. It's very odd given all the attention that was put on Marcus Freeman's approach prior to the Texas A&M game, how he was pumping up his players, and people were getting very fired up about that. And probably I guess from my standpoint, probably putting too much into that. Like, did that really mean anything? Did it make a difference in Notre Dame's ability to win that game? Probably not, right? I mean, that was
good optics.
That was a long time prior to when they actually had to win the game in the fourth quarter, right? So, like, I don't know how much that was mattering when in the moments in the game that mattered, but certainly it's good optics. And I think critics of Marcus Freeman could say, like, hey, this has become a program that is more about optics than it is about winning. Certainly Notre Dame isn't a losing program, but it's not winning at the level that Notre Dame wants to. And to have those two games back to back is just sort of mind-boggling that Notre Dame could have played so well and risen to the moment so well at Texas A&M and done the complete opposite in their home stadium in their season opener, and put their season sort of in jeopardy and what they hope to accomplish this season in jeopardy.
Yeah, I mean, as I wrote on Saturday night, it was still Saturday night and not Sunday morning. We've seen kind of this movie before, but with a more palatable ending. In 2012, they win this big game at Navy with Everett Golson's first start, and they come back and they play, ironically, a really average to below average Purdue team in Notre Dame Stadium. And they needed Tommy Rees to come off the bench, who got booed, to save them in that game. In 2018, a Notre Dame playoff team came off a big home win over a really good Michigan team and almost lost to Ball State. And then in 2021, a team that almost made the playoff comes in their home opener after opening on the road at Florida State, big emotional overtime win at Florida State, and almost gets beat by Toledo. But those teams won. This one didn't, and that was the big difference there.
Yeah, obviously, I think the biggest discussion after the game, other than Marcus Freeman, is where this offense is. And it was certainly disappointing what the Irish put forth in terms of an offensive production against Northern Illinois. Marcus Freeman offered a couple of different issues that are preventing Notre Dame from throwing the ball downfield with Riley Leonard a week after when he was asked about Riley Leonard's ability to throw down the field, and he pushed back strongly about feeling that is something that he feels Riley Leonard is able to do and is part of his skill set. Today, Marcus Freeman said there are opportunities to throw the ball down the field that Leonard needs to take. He also pointed out that receivers need to make plays down the field. Who do you think needs to step up more?
I think Leonard needs to step up more. There were some instances where the receivers didn't play great. Jaden Greathouse dropped what would have been, I believe, a third down conversion. And there were other times that receivers could have made plays. But I think Riley's decision-making and Riley's execution could have made a big difference in this game, especially the interception on 2nd and 1 late in the game with 5:55 left that got returned to midfield. I haven't seen many balls in my career that have been underthrown that much without somebody tipping it. So I would say it's on Leonard's shoulders, and I would say Riley Leonard thinks it's on Riley Leonard's shoulders as well. I mean, you asked where this offense is. Right now, they are 104th in total offense out of 133 FBS teams, 110th in scoring offense, 129th in pass efficiency, 69th in rush offense, 114th in passing yards per game, 128th in third down efficiency. They are number one, tied for red zone offense, so that's one good thing.
Right.
But there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, I think more blame goes to Leonard than the receivers from my perspective. In reality, obviously, both of them play a role, but I think Riley Leonard needs to give them some more chances. It's extremely odd coming out of a game saying that when the quarterback still threw 2 interceptions. Like he threw 2 interceptions, which is what happens when you're taking too many chances sometimes. But it also feels like he's not taking enough chances still. So that sort of speaks to the conundrum that Notre Dame's offense is in right now, that even when the few chances that Riley Leonard is taking, it's not working out, and they need for him to make more chances. And who's to say that more mistakes won't happen as a result of that? So I think this passing offense is in bad shape. I have some confidence that it can get in a better position, maybe more confidence than Notre Dame fans who are feeling it right now. But there's certainly a lot of things need to come together in order for this to get back on the right track. Marcus Freeman was asked today if he considered replacing Riley Leonard with Steve Angeli in the fourth quarter on Saturday, and he shut that down. You asked about how Leonard has handled the last 48 hours. Do you believe that Leonard has the makeup to sort of recover from these first two games and become the passer that Indy expects him to be?
I think he does. I think he went through this during his freshman year at Duke before Mike Elko got there. And there's a lot of adversity in being a Duke football player. And Riley Leonard was a three-star guy coming out of high school. He overcame that. He overcame some injury problems last year, ended up having to call it a day when he got the turf toe, but, played through some ankle. I mean, I don't question his toughness or his mental makeup just from what I've seen of him. The fact that his teammates voted a newcomer captain, I think says a lot about, what they expect of him. I guess the thing I'll throw to you, though, Tyler, is what did you think of the answer that Marcus didn't consider Steve Angeli in the fourth quarter of that game, and also kind of implying that he's not considering him in this week's game?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think Riley Leonard's the more talented quarterback. I said this on our post-game takeaways Saturday night that I think that many Notre Dame fans are sort of inflating Steve Angeli's ability based on the appearances that he's had. Certainly, it's commendable what he did against Oregon State. But I think this is Notre Dame needs something different at quarterback. The problem is Riley Leonard isn't necessarily giving them exactly what they need either. But I do think Riley Leonard is more of what they need than Steve Angeli. So it's not surprising to me that Marcus Freeman would say that. I mean, even if he did consider it, I don't know, in what ways would that benefit him? And even if he is considering replacing him, he probably would keep that under the vest. So I'm not surprised that he's handled it that way. I do think that the leash has to get shorter for Riley Leonard. I think you can't live with this very much longer. I don't think. I think you can't put yourself in position to lose games because of your inability to move the ball consistently on offense. And if the lack of a passing threat is hampering Notre Dame's offense to that extent, I think you have to consider other options. So I think the leash gets shorter. What sort of leash do you think Riley Leonard is on at this point?
Well, let me preface it by saying I agree with you as far as what Marcus's decision was. I think if Joe Alt and Blake Fisher were on this offensive line with the current interior guys, I think maybe you could have a different conversation. But I also think this guy's your captain. This guy you've given all this time and thought to making your number one quarterback. And I think you put Steve Angeli in, it looks like a panic move. Now, I think Tim O'Malley asked the question well, because he also fit in there. Was there something physically limiting him? Was kind of how he prefaced it. And Marcus dismissed that there was a physical limitation, because we all saw in the first quarter, Riley Leonard got up and he was kind of grabbing his opposite shoulder early in the game, but stayed in the game and continued to play. But as far as the leash, Tyler, again, I think what you're going to see from teams now is 8 in the box. They're going to do what teams did to Sam Hartman last year, and Riley Leonard's going to have to defeat that with his legs and, more importantly, with his arm. And I don't know that Steve Angeli gives you that solution. He doesn't give that to you with his legs. And again, I understand why people have a high opinion of him and why people want to see him. And I don't think it's crazy to suggest that. I also don't know that he's the second best quarterback on the roster either. I'm not convinced that CJ Carr is, and I just haven't seen enough CJ Carr since the spring to know where he is with his game right now. But I think eventually he's going to rise up through that ranks. And again, no disrespect to Steve Angeli.
Yeah, the car dilemma, like, it seems like that it would be incredible if someone like CJ Carr could come into this situation and be the answer with everything else that Notre Dame is dealing with offensively and the inexperience it has in other places. For them to put a freshman quarterback in there, that would be certainly not an ideal situation for CJ Carr, but I don't necessarily disagree.
And it's not, but we've seen it at other programs. I think Lagway went into the Florida game and it was their starter. Again, it's not parallel situation. They're not playing for the same stakes. Florida's playing, I don't know, not to get booted out of SEC standings this year. They got a pretty hard schedule. I mean, they're not a playoff aspirational team this year either.
Right.
This is a developmental year for Florida.
One piece of good news from Marcus Freeman today is that wide receiver Jordan Faison is expected to return this week after missing the NIU game and most of the Texas A&M game with an ankle injury. How much of an impact do you think this will make on Notre Dame's offense?
I mean, if he's 100% healthy, Tyler, and I know that Marcus said he's going to practice Tuesday. You know, they didn't put him on the paper depth chart today, but Marcus kind of added him verbally. I think he helps, but I don't think he changes dynamically the offense. I think it's a plus. You know, I mean, that's the guy. I certainly would want him out there ahead of Chris Mitchell and the other options that they have at the field receiver. But again, I think Notre Dame's solutions better be more than just Jordan Faison getting healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Notre Dame's sake, you hope it makes a difference. I think he's someone that gives the offense more shiftiness, someone who could be trusted on some of the shorter throws. So if Notre Dame wants to do some more of the things it was trying to do against Texas A&M, I think Jordan Faison can be helpful with that. I mean, for instance, I just think like he's better at some of those short throws than Chris Mitchell is. And that is certainly could be a difference in giving the offense some more threats. But at some point, Notre Dame's gonna have to throw the ball downfield too. And is Faison better at that than Chris Mitchell? I don't know that we can say that with a lot of certainty either way. But certainly good news to get him back, especially when you watched it happen in real time. It looked like it could have been something much more serious than it is. And we'll see exactly how much he plays too, right? Like there's no guarantee that he's going to play a full-time role, but he is available and expect to be available and will be practicing Tuesday, according to Marcus Freeman. The unfortunate news for Notre Dame injury-wise was Joshua Burnham, defensive end, being listed as questionable following an ankle injury that was suffered late in the loss to Northern Illinois. How much of a loss would Joshua Burnham be, in your opinion?
Considering he played a career-high 53 snaps against Northern Illinois and played fairly well, I think it would be a big loss for them. I think they could compensate for it between R.J. Oben, who got pulled after 11 snaps, Bryce Young, who didn't play at defensive end. He played on special teams, but did not play at defensive end on Saturday. And you could also move one of the Vipers over. And Notre Dame had a package where they were playing Jason Anye at defensive end in the short yardage situations. And so they could certainly do that some. But Josh Burnham was playing at a much higher level than I thought R.J. Oben was. And so I do think Notre Dame would feel that loss if Josh Burnham couldn't play.
Yeah, I think Burnham has been a valuable member of the defense, particularly last week. And so it's unfortunate that he had that ankle injury that came, I think, on Notre Dame's third to last play defensively. He was playing his tail off, 4 tackles, a tackle for a loss, 1 quarterback hurry. And Oben has been, I think it's fair to say, disappointing. I mean, Marcus Freeman didn't even mince words necessarily. They expect him to play better. They need him to play better. And he was really quiet in the Northern Illinois game. And I thought he was relatively quiet in the Texas A&M game as well. I asked Marcus Freeman if he saw growth on the offensive line between games 1 and 2. He said he did. Do you agree?
I looked at the Pro Football Focus grades, and they got higher grades, at least the preliminary ones, in both pass blocking and run blocking. That did not match my eye test. Now, again, I wasn't watching them every play, but it felt like Northern Illinois got a lot of penetration, and especially Devontae O'Malley. It just seemed like I saw him in the backfield a lot, almost as much as Aeneas Williams, who played some for Notre Dame and was supposed to be in their backfield. But I thought they did not win the line of scrimmage against a team that they should have. So I would have to go back and review it. I know you're going to do that, Tyler. What do you say about that just from the initial eye test?
Yeah, I thought they looked a little bit better. It's still not a dominant group by any means. I think you are correct in that the protection wasn't the best at times. I don't think. I mean, that's in part having a lot of third longs that weren't in putting the offensive line in non-ideal situations. So I think it seemed to me like the game plan from Notre Dame wasn't as worried about protecting the offensive line as it was in the Texas A&M game, which is understandable, right? Like what A&M presented up front, it is a few grades above what Northern Illinois did. But I think because maybe Notre Dame didn't expect them to be as good as Texas A&M, it maybe left the offensive line in some vulnerable spots that Northern Illinois took advantage of. Marcus Freeman made a comment saying that we have to trust the protection better. And I think there is some validity to that Riley Leonard is getting out of the pocket and moving around too early sometimes when the pass protection is still settling in and is going to be able to hold up guys from making an impact on his throw, but he's anticipating it maybe a little too much, and then putting himself in tougher positions to try to make throws downfield. So, and also like a lot of times, like you're going to have to take your eyes off downfield, right, to get out of the pocket. And so maybe you miss a guy that's coming open late, right when you start moving out of the pocket because of some pressure. All right, Eric, before we get to our questions from the viewers, can you tell them about our partner Autograph?
Absolutely. You can now find Inside ND Sports Contact on the Autograph app, which is free to download on Android and Apple devices. And if you don't know how to do that, ask one of your grandkids. The company, co-founded by Tom Brady, believes devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans, and I can't argue with that. There are many cool tools and features in the app, including the daily replay, which summarizes the news from the previous day with links to content you may have missed. And shame on you if you did. You can download the app with the QR code at the bottom of our screen or by using the link listed in the video description. From there, go find our content in the Notre Dame community. Make sure you use the referral code INDS, Inside ND Sports, INDS, so Autograph knows we sent you.
All right. We have plenty of questions in the question queue, as you can imagine, but please feel free to keep submitting them. Let's start with this one from Eric Swope. Emotional last few days for me, joyfully becoming a first-time grandfather while bearing the emotional heartbreak of Saturday. Please give me some hope for my ND boys on the field.
Well, I think you better watch out, or ND is going to recruit the grandchild and put him in the game, or her, and probably help. Congratulations, Eric, on becoming a grandpa. I have 6 of them, and it is awesome. And again, now they're my phone download helpers. Give you some hope for the ND boys on the field. I still believe that Notre Dame has a roster that can get them to the playoff. I also think they have the kind of coordinators and coaches, assistant coaches, to get them to the playoff. Now, the dynamic of becoming that team, I'm not sure of after last Saturday. And the dynamic of where Marcus Freeman is in his head coaching evolution, I was shaken by what happened on Saturday from the standpoint that shouldn't happen in year 3. I I could see that in year 1 or 2, not in year 3. But again, I think there's talent on this roster. I think there's a lot of things going right for Notre Dame. And what made Saturday so shocking was because of all the momentum Notre Dame has in so many areas. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, again, I echo the congratulations to Eric on being a grandfather. That's awesome. The hope is to me comes down to, hey, college football is a one week at a time sport. Like, you could be on top of the world against Texas A&M and at the bottom of the world against Northern Illinois. So there's no reason that Notre Dame can't get back to where it was that first week. And I think certainly the motivation that a loss like this provides has to bring some value to the program. That's not the way you want to go about finding it, I don't think. But I think it's certainly another lesson for the players and this coaching staff about what it needs to do to get things done on the field. So I think that this is a learning opportunity that you can only hope that Notre Dame takes full advantage of. And there's no reason that this should limit their ability to continue and get back on the right path. If in any way, it should help them try to find their way back. Whether or not they actually get to where they want to is a different story. But I think these Saturday should be a valuable lesson for this team. I know it might not feel like that as a Notre Dame fan who watched it happen just a couple of years ago. But I think for the people that are in the building, there's got to be some value to that. Richard Bond asked, Coach mentioned that each practice week should be consistent every week, but didn't he not practice on Thursday? Isn't that contradictory?
He didn't practice on Thursday. I'm not sure that I'm following that. I'll let you answer that one because I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I think Richard assumed that because Marcus Freeman talked about them having physical practice on Tuesday and Wednesday, that they didn't practice on Thursday. That's not the case. They just didn't have, like, the physicality that they asked of the players is not the same on Thursdays.
Okay.
So I think
now I understand the question. And I think when he commented about the physicality on the practices, it was Thursday at his noon Zoom. And so they hadn't practiced yet that day.
Oh, right.
So
yeah,
he
true.
did. Yeah. So he didn't comment on that practice since he didn't have the psychic powers. I got you, Richard. I'm sorry. I didn't understand it. Now I do understand the question. Yes. It probably wasn't presented very well, but yeah, his Zoom is at noon before they practice on Thursdays.
All right. Ron Robert says Malik Zaire posted that Riley Leonard has so little preseason practice because of his injury that Steve Angeli should have been the starter. Interested in your thoughts?
I'm surprised Malik didn't say he should have been the starter. And I love Malik, and he's been on our podcast before, and I've sat down and had the whiskey that he is part owner of that whiskey company, sat down in the hotel downtown South Bend at the Doubletree and had some whiskey with him. I think it's an interesting opinion. I trust that the Notre Dame coaches plotted this out. I mean, I think that's a conversation that they should have had at some point, and I'm sure that they did. I think their thought was, yeah, he did miss almost the whole spring, and yet he was healthy this summer. He did a lot of good things this summer to play catch up. And their thought was, yeah, it's going to take a while for this offense to evolve, but if they can make it through the Texas A&M game, they should be able to ease into the rest of the schedule and bring the offense along deliberately and incrementally. And then Saturday happened and kind of messes up, and now you have a sense of urgency with the Purdue game and really no wiggle room the rest of the season in terms of your team goals. But I would have played it this way. I would have played it with Leonard. If you feel like that's your best quarterback, I would have gone with Leonard. Tyler is muted, so we are going to have to think about what his answer would have been.
Sorry. To me, it doesn't matter.
That would have been funny if I talked while your lips.
Yeah, you could be a ventriloquist for me.
Yeah.
to me, it doesn't matter how much time you missed. It's who was the better quarterback in preseason camp. And every indication that I've heard is that Riley Leonard was. So I think maybe you could take issue with it maybe not being a true battle in preseason camp, because I mean, I don't know that we ever thought it. And anytime I asked Marcus Freeman about it, he didn't necessarily present it as a battle, but he also wouldn't name Riley Leonard the starter. But I just think that it had been assumed that he would become the starter, but I don't think that there were things that Notre Dame saw in the preseason that were like, oh man, I don't know that Riley Leonard should be our starter. So I think he appeared to be the better quarterback going into camp. And they believe that he's the right guy for the job. And so that's why he was given it. All right. Jeff Stevens asks, realizing Rendell has a different style, what exactly are they asking him to do? Certainly minimal hang time, but they need to then punt it away from the returner. Seems like too much finesse.
Jeff, that was on my list of questions had I had a third one, and I'm kind of saving it for Thursday and hoping that there's not something more pressing on I need to ask Thursday. But it is baffling to me because this isn't the James Rendell we saw in the practices. I mean, he did a lot of different kinds of punts. Sometimes he'd do the rolling rugby punts. Sometimes he would punt it so high in the sky. I mean, you guys probably think we're making up the stories now, but I mean, it was amazing the hang time and the distance that he got. And it doesn't feel like, it almost feels like he's kind of pooching it. In fact, the Northern Illinois quarterback pooched the punt better than James Rendell did when he had a full field to use and punt it as far as he did. So that's certainly something I'm going to ask Marty Biaggi about in the Tuesday coordinator availability. So that's a good question. I'm writing that down actually. So
yeah, I would be surprised if they weren't asking him to get hang time. I don't know what I'm not the punting expert that would understand what the advantage to that would be unless you're kicking it out of bounds, or kicking it like in a way that is bouncing. Now, he certainly has been doing, it seemed like a pretty good job of the whatever coffin corner, I think is what we used to call them. He hasn't been like kicking them to the corner, but like pinning them back with inside the 20-yard line. So maybe just the vacillating back between the two different things is tougher for James Rendell than they were hoping. But yeah, I mean, he's inexperienced. These are we've seen it now, his first two games of American football ever. And I think he put Notre Dame in some bad spots with some short punts. I think it was his first and fourth punts specifically that I thought weren't up to snuff and need to be better. Eric Swope asks, Riley is such an easygoing young man. Can he get tougher?
From the people that I've talked to him, there's no question about his tougher. So I think you can be easygoing off the field and be a real competitor on the field. And
Right.
Everything that we've heard from his teammates, from his coaches, from people in his past is that, I mean, he would elbow his mom out of the way if they were playing, you know, I don't know, croquet in the backyard or whatever. You know, he would be competitive about that. So I do not think there's a question of toughness there. I do think there's a question of execution. I would question that at this point, but not his toughness.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't think his toughness is an issue. Joe Long says, problem is Angeli hasn't done anything wrong when he's on the field, whereas Leonard has shown to be terribly inconsistent to outright bad.
Well, Riley Leonard has also won some awfully big games, not in a Notre Dame uniform, and then one in a Notre Dame uniform. I hate to, I feel like I'm downgrading Angeli when I'm trying to make this, and I'm not trying, because Angeli has surpassed my expectations already of what he would do as a college quarterback, and he has answered the bell, and he did a very good job against admittedly an opt-out Oregon State defense with an opt-out Notre Dame offense. So he's done a great job. When I've seen him in practice, and again, we didn't see the full range of all the skill sets and stuff. Our practice windows were more limited this year. He didn't wow me. I mean, if you walked in off the street and you didn't know anything about these guys, you'd say 13's better than 8. And I think 13's better than 8. But again, Riley's got to prove it. And we've mentioned that the leash is a little bit shorter now, and this is the week we need to see some improvement. And that's from also Mike Denbrock calling the game. And I think Mike Denbrock is one of, if not the best offensive coordinators in college football. And don't put a for sale sign in front of my house because I said that. I'm going to give you guys how I really feel. I'm not going to pander to what the anger and the prevailing sentiment is. I'm going to say what I really feel.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, speaking like, I'm fine with people being mad at us because that's part of the job. When your team stinks, it's also the reporter's fault, and you see that.
So put the for sale sign in Tyler's yard.
Well, I'm not an owner, so you can sell this property if you want to, but it is mine. Anyways, so like I understand the frustration, but like what I would like people to understand is that what I want to be more than anything is right. Like I'm not here, like it doesn't do me any good to say something that you disagree with and then be wrong. Like I'm trying to be right. And so that's where my analysis comes from, where my opinions come from. It's not to get you fired up or upset or vice versa. It is to be right. And so like I understand if people get upset with us and don't agree with us, but I would just like people to believe me when I say like this is where my opinions are coming from and what I'm hoping to do and be, and that is right. I'm not always right, of course. None of us are, but that's what we're aiming to do. Right.
I mentioned this on our message board. I mean, when we got toward the end of 2020, 2001 season, I'm like, Davy's got to go. Tyrone Willingham, I was thinking that in season 2. Charlie Weiss, who we just had on the podcast, who I got along with, I knew it wasn't happening for Charlie. Once we got, even after he rebounded somewhat at year 3, couldn't get the defense fixed. In 2016 with Brian Kelly, I spit into the wind with that one. I said they need to keep Brian Kelly. I think if he can make changes, there's something worth salvaging here. And I was right about that, but I'm telling you, that was a long off season because the fans were mad at me and Brian Kelly was mad at me too for ad running in our paper when we were at the South Bend Tribune.
Yeah, which you also had
I had no control over that. But I'm going to give it to my honest opinion. I'm going to base it on my instincts and what I've seen in the past, and I've seen these kind of things turned around. Now, I'm not going, hey, Marcus Freeman's going to win a national championship this year or next, but I'm not ready to sell him down the river. But what happened Saturday shook me. But I do have a much longer track record with Mike Denbrock, and I do feel like he's proven himself in a lot of difficult situations. Their first year at Cincinnati, they weren't good. And then they had some really solid years after that, including making the playoff. And at LSU, he had 2 really good years there, and he had some good years at Notre Dame.
All right. Next question is from Ron Robert. Where has Jaden Thomas been in this offense?
MIA. He had 14 snaps on Saturday, and it is surprising. Now, Bo Collins is playing the most snaps right now, and Bo Collins plays the same position that Jaden Thomas does. So they're on the field sometimes together, but not very often. There was a thought that maybe there might be some teams where Jaden Thomas could slide into the slot where a bigger receiver might give you an advantage there. But Jaden Greathouse can kind of fill that role. Jaden Greathouse is 6'1", 215 in the slot. You also have Jaden Harrison, who's a faster slot receiver. So do you put either Bo Collins or Jaden Thomas over on the field side? That's difficult when you want to get somebody that can take the top off of offense. I'm wondering about Jaden Thomas, but I do feel like he's a guy you can count on when he's healthy, and I would love to see them be creative in getting him more reps on the field.
Yeah, I wonder I think it might have been the first. No, I think it was the second series. Yeah, or maybe it was the first series. Jaden Thomas missed a block on a screenplay. That is one of Jaden Thomas's strength as a receiver. And I wonder if his reps were decreased because of that. I've been surprised by his inability to sort of carve out a significant role so far. And I'm not saying that Jaden Thomas would be the answer, but I think he could be a valuable asset to Notre Dame, and I don't think Notre Dame's necessarily given up on him. Blyberg says McNeese State threw the ball better against Texas A&M than we did. We were fortunate, and I was spending time researching this, and this is just not accurate. McNeese State's starting quarterback was 9 of 19 with 2 interceptions and 1 touchdown and 80 yards. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about. It's like, if you want to criticize us, you got to be fair too. You're making up numbers. They threw for 99 yards against Texas A&M, so that's just not accurate.
And the funny thing is about the McNeese State game, Connor Wigman went from having the worst rating of any quarterback in the FBS against Notre Dame to having the best quarterback rating by Pro Football Focus against McNeese State. And that's from Carter Carls and Pro Football Focus. If you can't believe Carter Carls, who can you believe?
All right, Bob Alvey asks, can Marcus Freeman coach without analytics? Was a bad look on TV. Not sure I've seen other coaches have an analytic advisor within shouting distance. Is this his security blanket?
Why don't you take that first? I want to marinate with that a little bit.
I don't. Here's the thing. This seems like a thing.
Should he have a spy standing next to him? I'm just kidding.
Right? Yeah. No one complained when Connor Stalions was standing next to Jim Harbaugh, but until they found out later what he was doing. Now, I don't think Anthony Tresh is doing that for Notre Dame, but this seems like we don't know who their analytics guys are on these other coaching staff, so that's why you have no idea that person is standing next to the head coach. I'm sure that other coaches have analytics guys that they consult on the sidelines. Now, maybe, I guess some guys could have them
be up in the booth, and they made
right. They could be they could be in the booth and on the headset, but Marcus Freeman had him at his side. This is one of the things that I feel like when things go wrong, everyone's going to find someone to blame, and I think Anthony Tresh is getting the brunt of this. Marcus Freeman is the one making the decisions. So yeah, I mean, he could have had a model standing next to him. It wasn't going to look good, like, because they lost the game. That's why it's a bad look. It's not because he was consulting an analytics guy that's presenting Marcus Freeman with information to help make decisions.
Who was the offensive line coach between the two, Harry? Jeff
Quinn.
Jeff Quinn. So Jeff Quinn, when he came to Notre Dame, he was originally an analyst. And I remember sitting down with him because he's an old school guy. Before he was the offensive line coach, he was an offensive analyst. And sitting down with him when he got the offensive line job after Harry left the first time. And we were talking about how did analytics influence you being an analyst, because that was his living. That's the way he was earning a paycheck. And he said he loved having the numbers, but he still went with his experience and his coaching instincts. But he loved having the numbers as maybe just a second opinion. And I think that's what Marcus is doing with the analytics. I don't think he's, saying, okay, Anthony, what do I call now? He's just saying, what do the numbers say here? And then Marcus is making a decision based on that. But I think Tyler's right. If Notre Dame had beaten Northern Illinois by the score that I had picked, then I think we would be saying, wow, look at Marcus. This is part of his growth. It's just like when Tyrone Willingham was really stoic on the sidelines. When they were winning, oh, he's like the Buddha, he's meditating or whatever. And when they were losing, it was he's thinking about golf. So
yeah, like was Tresh not on the next to him during the Texas A&M game? I don't know whether or not he was for sure or not, but
I believe he was.
Can't imagine that they played it differently, and no one had an issue with them then. So yeah, I think and Marcus Freeman has talked about it. Like,
but good question, Bob.
He consults analytics, but he doesn't live and die with them. Now I think
I think he did more last year when they didn't have a director of analytics. I think he's got better analytics, but I think Marcus leaned into it too much last year, at least in the press conferences.
Yeah, well, I think it's presumptive to say he has better analytics. We don't know what analytics he has this year versus last year.
Well, he has a director.
Other than they hired someone.
Yeah.
And that's why this guy is catching heat, because he has that title. What I was going to say is that analytics, like the point of analytics is that you're supposed to stick to the math. And so like it sometimes it can defeat the purpose of like having it. You like saying you use analytics, but then not following them. It sort of makes the analytics useless. Now, obviously I think that's what a coach has to do, right? The coach is the one that is whose job is on the line, not the math. But it can be tough, and certainly when things go wrong, people are going to take issue with it.
I like that. I mean, I would be interested in the numbers if they said, 4th and 2, a 70% chance or whatever here. But I would have other things that I would consider. I'm not sure if I'd want the analytics or not, but yeah, I would listen to them, and then I'd say we're going for it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Jeff Stevens asked, we did this last year, but are the wide receivers really getting open? I don't know if Leonard is being overly cautious with the throws or players are not open. Please help.
Marcus Freeman was asked about that in the press conference, whether they were getting open in practice. And he said to the fact that they were, I'm not watching every receiver on every play. I'm trying to take in as much as I can. And sometimes Tyler can tell you, I watch with binoculars. So I'm focusing in on a certain part of the offense. Sometimes I watch without them, but most of the time I have my binocs on. And I thought there were open receivers at times, not every time, but there were open receivers, and some of them were dropping it. Sometimes Riley overthrew or underthrew people. Chris Mitchell was open on that last one that he underthrew by 10 or 15 yards. So I don't know that that's an issue. And again, as Mitchell Evans starts to figure more into the offense, as Notre Dame gets a field receiver that can force some difficult decisions on a defensive coordinator, I think we'll see more guys get
open. Mike DeVoy asks, who would have thought NIU was going to be the trap game? At least we can hope it was. I'm late tonight, so maybe you've already answered this. What happened to the run defense between week 1 and week 2?
Well, I actually have a friend who's not even a Notre Dame fan that was reminding me today that he thought it was a trap game. So what happened to the and he did say that before the game. So I don't think he's just making it up now. I know better than that. What happened to the run defense from week 1 to week 2? Marcus Freeman tried to explain it. I think bigger picture, Notre Dame needs to be opponent specific with their run defense. And I think somebody mentioned this on our message board. I think they could have played 8 in a box in this game and been able to be more effective against the run and put Northern Illinois into more difficult positions. It was interesting because Al Golden was asked during the Tuesday night press conferences, where his background comes from of not maybe emphasizing run defense as much as other defensive coordinators do. And I think some of it is his 6 years in the NFL. And he was kind of like that when he was in college. Mm-hmm. And he just says, I'm more concerned. He didn't say he wasn't concerned with run defense, but he's more concerned with explosive plays. I think you can do both with as talented as roster defensively as Notre Dame does and as much versatility and depth as they have. I think you can do both, but it's really, really important to be good at run defense. And I wrote about that in this morning's column. And you look at all the national champions in the BCS and playoff era, and most of them are top 10. A lot of them are even the number 1 run defense. And Notre Dame is right now 100th. I mean, the worst run defense ever to win a national championship from 98 on, which is BCS and playoff, is 40th. That was Miami in 2001. There's only been 3 that weren't in the top 25. Notre Dame was 26th last year. And in the 3 games they lost, their run defense hurt them against Ohio State, Clemson, and Louisville. They gave up a third of their rushing yards in those 3 games, and all those teams were way above Notre Dame's average per carry yielded, which is 3.4. They were all well above 4 in those 3 games. So, yes, Notre Dame needs to look at their schematics. What Marcus explained was some schemes that Northern Illinois were running that caused Notre Dame to maybe be more lateral in its thinking and pursuit instead of attacking upfield. But I think my explanation's better.
Yeah, there was an early long run that Brown had that it was just a lapse, I think, from my perspective, in Jalen Sneed and Xavier Watts. They took bad angles and sort of got frozen by a little hesitation by Brown. And the thought about the safeties, and Sean mentions this, thank you for the comment, Sean, for the ND run defense, although unconventional, it might have worked better to sub out a safety and sub in a third defensive tackle. I saw the comment about the safeties. I don't have the data to know whether or not Notre Dame was playing more 2 high safety than 1 high safety. They were playing a lot of 1 high safety against A&M, and I know that at times against Northern Illinois, Notre Dame was playing with 1 cornerback. So without having rewatched every play defensively, my focus first will be on the offense. I don't know that the safe, like that Notre Dame wasn't loading the box. I'm not sure that Notre Dame was playing standard 2 high safeties a ton of times. So
they didn't play very much nickel. They had 3 linebackers in the game a lot. Ben Morrison didn't have a very good game, though. I mean, when he's covering, it makes everybody better, and he did not have a good game in coverage.
All right. Let's see. Mike DeVoy, or no, we already did Mike. Sorry, Mike. Bob asked, will we see 2 backs on the field on the same snap? When will we see Love as a receiver? Was talked about a lot during fall camp, but seen little, if any, of it so far this season.
I do think you'll see 2 backs on the field on the same snap some. When will we see Love as a receiver? I thought we would have seen it in this last game, so I'm not sure that my prediction is going to come true. I think we'll eventually see it. I think it's a good look because you can do a lot out of that. You can do running plays with it. You can split Love out and try to get a mismatch with him in a deep route. And maybe they're saving that for what they thought was a better opponent than Northern Illinois, who ended up being more than they could handle. So I think you'll see it here in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a steady diet of it, but I think you'll see some.
Yeah, I don't. The thing about Love as a receiver, well, they will split him out in empty sets and stuff like that. But I don't know that you want to take your slot off the field, which is what you would typically do for a running back to go out there. Unless you take a tight end off the field. And if you're not playing Mitchell Evans at tight end right now, I'm not sure that anyone else is worth playing at tight end as a receiver with the way that they've played so far. So maybe that is something they can do. I want to see Jadarian Price in the game more. I thought the lack of snaps that he had against Northern Illinois was surprising to me. He must be very deficient as a pass protector. But the Notre Dame needs to do a better job of coaching him up then.
And he had 13 snaps for those who weren't counting at home.
Yeah, and that's less than the combination of Devin Ford and Aeneas Williams. Those 2 outsnapped. In combining them, they outsnapped Jadarian Price. So that's something that I'd like to see in terms of a little bit more balance offensively. Let's get to some quick hitters on the personnel front, Eric. I talked about Jadarian Price. In this last game, Notre Dame's top 3 wide receivers played significantly more than any of their backups. Is that group, in your opinion, good enough to merit that? And if not, which backup would you like to see playing more?
Well, getting Faison back is a good thing. I know he doesn't count. So I will say Jaden Thomas. I would like to see Jaden Thomas get more opportunities, more snaps than 14. I think, again, his history with different quarterbacks, when he's been healthy, he's been a guy you can really depend on, especially on third down. And if he missed a block on a screen, yeah, he deserves to maybe spend some time on the bench, but not enough where he's only getting 14 snaps in a game.
All right. Jalen Sneed played the fewest snaps at linebacker. Do you think that will continue to trend in that direction?
Well, he got the start in the 3 linebacker look. He only played 24 snaps, which isn't way off of what he played against in Texas A&M. I think he was at 31 in that game, but some of the others did. Jaden Osbury doubled up his snaps and played 34. And I thought Osbury played really well. Kingston Villiam also played a little bit more and had 7 tackles. If Jalen Sneed is consistent, he's an incredible weapon, but I thought he had a real struggle in that game. I think he kind of epitomized the defense's struggles. He was out of position a lot in the Northern Illinois game after having some good plays against Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think he's someone that gets off balance with misdirection and stuff like that, and so particularly when he's playing a traditional linebacker role, he can be exploited at times and get fooled and be put out of position. I agree. Jaden Osbury played very well. I think he's really putting heat on Jalen Sneed as a rover, and we'll see if Osbury can continue to expand his role as an inside linebacker. Because I think he's been one of the better linebackers so far for Notre Dame this season. We've talked a little about the offensive players. Let's talk about defensive players. Which defensive player who hasn't made a big impact in the first 2 games do you think we may see more out of against Purdue?
I would say maybe Bryce Young, given the injury situation with Josh Burnham, given the fact that RJ Oben hasn't been effective yet, and how excited Marcus Freeman was in the spring to have Bryce Young on campus, the fact that he's bigger, he's getting his feet wet on special teams. I could see him maybe stepping in and helping out at defensive end. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I think Riley Mills is someone who I certainly played a lot, but I think he's someone that we need to see more production out of. And so that's someone that I think could maybe play more and play better. Christian Gray was subbed out sometimes, and I think we'll still see plenty of Christian Gray moving forward. I think the personnel is there for the defense. They just have to figure out the right ways to use them, and get a little bit more consistent play out of some of the guys. But as a whole, I think the defense is playing pretty well. The biggest problem, in my opinion, against Northern Illinois is that the run defense wasn't consistent enough, and then they couldn't get Northern Illinois off the field, and that really hurt Notre Dame in the second half. All right, I think that's going to be it for us tonight. Jeff Stevens, I know you've asked a few different recruiting questions. That has not been my focus yet, but I will be focusing on recruiting, and I want to give that information to folks on the Insider Lounge first before I would share that here on YouTube. So that's a good reminder that if you're not subscribed to us at InsideNDSports.com, give us a try with a 30-day free trial. That's exclusive to you guys here on YouTube. Use promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis, recruiting coverage, and special access to us on the Insider Lounge, which is where we spend a lot of our time and share our inside information first. Our YouTube schedule for this week, we'll have our Inside ND Sports podcast uploaded on Thursday. Place your bets on Friday. We'll have Bob Morton back for Into the End Zone with Eric following the game, and then Eric and I will share our post-game takeaways as well. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to help our push to 3,000. We're almost there for our 3,000 subscribers, so please help us out there. And always check out our content on InsideNDSports.com and try not to let Notre Dame football ruin your week this week. All right, have a good week, folks.